As you likely already know, the economy is, and video games usually aren't your first financial priority. But luckily for us, we are living in the free-to-play game golden era. Since I have the blessings of the gods of fate and time, I'm creating this series as a way to help people find out about free games of all different genres to help distract themselves with as the world continues to burn. Welcome to the free-to-play game review. And if I do this right, maybe you'll learn something new or find a new favorite little game to play. So let's get started. So the first game of our series is Gravitas, and Gravitas is a highly rated free-to-play game developed by Galaxy Shark Studios, released in August 2019. Available on Steam or Epic Games for free, Gravitas is cataloged as a puzzle platformer indie game. Indie, I'm assuming, because Galaxy Shark Studios is listed as a company of 6 to 10 people. They also utilized Unreal Engine 4 to make this game if you're a budding game designer. What initially drew me to choose this game was a combination of the emphatically positive reviews as well as what little I could assume of the concept in the game's About section. It reads, Gravitas is a short, first-person puzzle platforming game that transports you to the Gallery of Refined Gravity, otherwise known as the Gorg. There you'll meet the gallery's eccentric curator as he accompanies you through its puzzling and increasingly lethal exhibits. Manipulate gravity and the gallery itself to prove yourself a pupil worthy of the curator's masterwork. So yeah, I mean, I want to prove myself a pupil worthy of the curator's masterwork, and what even is the Gallery of Refined Gravity? I was so intrigued by the way that this game was presented, regardless of the fact that I don't normally play games like this, that I just had to see what it was all about. So, you start the game looking at a sea of space, and you're greeted by a robotic voice that guides you through the first small area of the game. Moving around was easy enough at first, but I immediately realized how accustomed I am to games like holding my hand, as I absolutely could not understand the properties behind using this glove. Like, I get here that left brain means left click, and I'm here left clicking, but nothing is happening. I thought there was something wrong with my mouse. I even quit the game thinking that something got screwed up or whatever, and I tried to restart it to make sure it was working right. But as soon as I logged back in, I jumped over the little gap, and I just let the curator tell me exactly what to do. So apparently, in order to move around, you just have to left click on these blue gravity field things that allow you to create little streams that you can basically like fly weightlessly through. So yeah, after that, all my frustrations just melted away, and I was ready to take on the gravity bending mechanics of Gravitas. However, when I reset the game, I learned that you could get different voice lines based on your actions, which was really cool. I was really impressed by that. I didn't expect for a small little free-to-play game to add some kind of detail like that, like reactionary dialogue detail. But yeah, so I am kind of glad that I reset it, because I immediately was able to get like a whole other game experience. So that definitely adds to the game's replayability factor, which we'll talk about that in a little bit. So the game is not lying in the description when it says that it is short. The maps are pretty small, but I would say they contain just enough detail to help add to the overall world. It also took me like quite a while to realize that these like yellow dots here, they also work as guides. So in a game where they wouldn't explain to me that I had to left click on the blue wall, I didn't expect for them to like give me a little like roadmap to the finish line. You know what I mean? So I thought that was cool too. It's a pretty accessible game. So yeah, like I said earlier, I don't usually play puzzle platformer games, but I think that this was a great little introduction to that style for me. Based on this, I won't be like scared, I guess, or nervous when selecting a new puzzle platformer game, perhaps for this series or for my own personal pleasure. The puzzles never felt like so frustrating to the point where I felt like I had to quit or take a break, and I felt a great sense of accomplishment upon completing each one of them, as if I'd solved some kind of like ages-old problem, you know what I mean? It was super satisfying to figure all of this stuff out, and I felt like my brain was like firing off the whole entire time, which was also a really cool feeling. That's what I really love about puzzle games in general, is they always just like make me feel so smart, you know? Like when you find like a good puzzle game that you can just like play and play and play, that feeling of, I don't know, that feeling of like intellectual like conquest is basically unmatched. It makes me feel so good. In games anyway, you know what I mean? Not like in real life. So in Gravitas, the difficulty scales gently each level, so it never feels like you're like making too much of like a jump in difficulty, you know what I mean? Like it feels very comfortable and it flows together really well. Also, the design changes quite a bit for each of these puzzles, and again, as we know, there aren't that many because the game isn't super long. But none of the puzzles felt redundant or repetitive or boring at all. They just felt novel each and every time. I mean, of course, I still have like my favorite one. Like, I'm sure everyone has like a favorite level, and I'm pretty sure my favorite level is this level, the garden. So this is my favorite because it really doesn't tell you anything. Like, I don't know if you're supposed to like read into what the curator is saying and like assume things or whatever, but I guess I wasn't really listening to him because I was just so focused on this like big open like playground room. It even kind of like gives the vibes of like, I don't know if you understand like what I'm talking about, but there used to be these like places where you would go and play like as a kid, and it would have like ball pits and like slides and shit like that. And like, honestly, I feel like a couple of these levels really give off that kind of like playhouse vibe. It's very fun. It's very open, free, and like creative. You know what I mean? It's like really, really cozy. Nostalgic almost, but how can I be nostalgic for like the future? I mean, I guess that's a topic for another time, but anyway, regardless of that, I definitely echo the sentiment of many other players when I agree that the worst part of this game is when it ends. The game definitely ends really quickly. Once you start understanding how everything works, I think the game probably will only take you about like an hour or so. I think overall it took me an hour and a half on my first playthrough, but I'm pretty easily distracted, so I think I probably took like a lot of breaks and like stopped to do other things because I have a lot of like dead footage. So but yeah, I think it probably wouldn't take very long on your second playthrough either, especially because you know exactly what you're doing. Like maybe you forgot a couple like things to do with the puzzles, but I can imagine that the second playthrough might take something like half an hour instead. So it's actually really fun and easy to just run through and complete. Like, I don't play a lot of games where I just like end the game, finish the game a lot. It's actually rather rare for me nowadays because the majority of the games I play are like open-ended or like after the little finish line, you know what I mean? Like the game just keeps going, you just keep playing it. So being able to complete a game like game over, like not game over, but like the end, you know what I mean? Like credits roll and stuff. That's really cool. Like I don't do that a lot. So a game that I can complete in one day, that's not even one day, like half of a gaming session, that's incredible. That just feels good, you know? I just like checking off boxes, and now I can say that I finished this one, right? That's just the kind of person I am, I guess. Maybe you know what I'm talking about, maybe you don't. But anyway, I don't want these videos to be super long, so let's just hop right into the rating section. Okay, so basically what I'm gonna do for each of these games is I'm going to rate them on 5 different categories, and then there will be an overall average rating at the end. So the 5 categories are: how free is it, the playability, soundtrack and voice acting, story and concept, and then art, vision, graphics. Okay, I know that there's a lot of words in each of those categories, but I think that all of those concepts share a similar vibe, okay? So whatever, that's just how I'm gonna do it, okay? All right, so let's start off with how free is it? So for a game like Gravitas, obviously it is 100% free. I envision that we'll get into some games that aren't, that they are just actually like true to name free to play. However, I think it is necessary to also grade games on this because maybe their freeness makes them inherently more valuable than a game that is free to play that has like full marks in every other category. You know what I mean? Because this is the free to play game review, right? So obviously, yeah, Gravitas gets 5 out of 5 hearts because it is 100% free. Yay! Okay, so let's move on. Next up is playability. So playability encompasses a vibe of both like how easy it is to play, how intuitive it is to play, how replayable it is. You know what I mean? Like the handling, stuff like that. So I think that Gravitas deserves 4 out of 5 hearts for this. Because, you know, it's a finite game. It's very short. There isn't much time that you can milk from it. You know what I mean? But I think it definitely is a game that you could pick up like every few years and revisit in a way that, you know, feels novel or familiar or anything like that. Like it'll just, you know, I think you could definitely pick it back up every once and again and enjoy it once you've kind of forgotten how everything works, you know what I mean? So I also think that it would be relatively easy to get a 100% completion, so I think that's kind of cool as well, and I guess that also contributes to its playability. Okay, so the next category is soundtrack and voice acting. I neglected to call this like audio because I felt like it didn't include enough description. Okay, so this is like all of the sounds, but specifically focusing on the sounds that for me make the game, right? So like obviously like sound effects and stuff are important too, but for me personally, the soundtrack and the voice acting are pretty important. And if there is no voice acting, then I would obviously put more pressure on the sound effects. So unfortunately, this is Gravitas's lowest rating for me personally. So I love hearing royalty-free music. It always feels like I'm in on a joke when I hear like Kevin MacLeod songs anywhere. You know what I mean? Like it's just like, I don't know, it feels like you're part of something when you can recognize music, I guess. But yeah. It's just not the most, it just doesn't capture me the same way that like an original soundtrack would, if that makes sense. Like I get very into video game music, like in such a way that sometimes it is kind of like the only music that I'm listening to. I don't know if you can relate, but oftentimes I find myself like playing and replaying certain game soundtracks just because like they're really good and they mean a lot to me. So if a game doesn't have its own original soundtrack in that way, I can't connect with the game as effectively. So the voice actors were definitely good, but it's just not my vibe. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like I've heard a robot that sounds like this like a million times. I'm sorry, an AI that sounds like this a million times. Please, AI, don't get mad at me. But yeah, so it just doesn't feel very like inventive or anything. I don't know, whatever. Here's the thing. I think the voice actors did a really good job, like technically, like objectively. However, subjectively, I am not into it, okay? So, I mean, like, I was in a really good mood this day when I rated all this stuff, so honestly, looking at all of these ratings, I probably would have rated this a bit lower as well as another category, but that's besides the point, you know? I think there's some value in not only trusting your, like, first impression of something, but also your impression of something when it's, like, fresh in your mind, you know what I mean? So it doesn't have to be your first impression, but it's been like 6 days since I've actually played this game now, so, you know, obviously I'm gonna misremember things. I'm not gonna like, you know, I'm not giving it the credit it deserves if I were to redo these ratings, you know? So I guess I shouldn't even say anything, but I thought that was important to note, so I'm gonna keep it in. Okay, the next category is the story and concept. So yeah, that should be pretty self-explanatory. So let me just explain what I wrote here, because now that I'm reading it, it might not be like super clear or understandable. So I wrote, the story unfolds perfectly as the player progresses and the concept matches the design. So what I mean to say there is, like, when it comes to storytelling, obviously I think like as you progress through the length of the overall story, you should be getting like, you know, information, right? So I think the pacing of this game is really good. So with each level you learn like just a little bit, but the game is really small, right? So it makes sense. I think it's perfectly matched up. The storytelling is done very well, especially for something with such a limited amount of time. And when I say the concept matches the design, I say it's like it's cohesive, right? Like it's all space, future, whatever theme. And obviously the story, no spoilers here. This is going to be a spoiler-free series for the first time in my life. But this whole concept of like space, future, and AI, I think is mirrored very well in the overall design of the game. Both like the fact that you're going through this museum made by an AI, or maybe it's an, honestly, I don't even know. Like, so see, that's the other cool part. That's why I think it deserves 4 out of 5 hearts, is because like this consciousness might not even just be pure AI. This could be like a person or a human that put their consciousness in the AI, right? So the fact that I can even ask a question like that makes the story better for me. I like being able to ask questions about a game. I don't necessarily just like knowing everything, if that makes sense. Let me know if you agree with that, because I love like detective work in games. You know what I mean? Like, I don't necessarily love detective games, but I love doing detective work, whether it's part of the game or not. Okay, so I think this is the last category. Yeah, so art, vision, and graphics. So I wanted this to be as open as possible, okay? So the reason I say this and in this order is because with the free-to-play games, obviously, you're not probably going to get like the best graphics all the time. And honestly, I don't even think that graphics make a game. There's a reason that graphics is the last word in this category. The art style, on the other hand, is very important to me in a game. And I mean, games are visual. They're mostly visual. I wouldn't say that they're purely visual, though some games totally are. But you, for the most part, if you can see, you're going to be seeing the game first and foremost, right? Like, you definitely are going to hear it. That's like part of the audio section. However, for the most part, you're going to be looking at it, right? So the art, vision, and graphics should all kind of like, for me, align. So when I say align, I mean that they should all kind of like match up, right? So if you were to play a game like this, like Gravitas or whatever, 3D puzzle platformer, right? You would probably, I mean, it's basically ideal that what you're doing is using some kind of tool to manipulate the map so that the map isn't, you know, just a flat blank space, right? So I think personally, that's why I rated this 5 out of 5, that the art, vision, and graphics are all perfectly aligned. Obviously, in a game that is free, like people aren't going to like give away too much of their labor, right? Like, developers work super hard to make games, so I'm not expecting like the most beautiful piece of whatever out of this, right? Now, in the free to play section, maybe that might be a bit different, but that is not a conversation for the moment. So overall, I think like the vision of this game is great. It like fits absolutely perfectly with the whole space feel. Again, I'm not trying to give away too much, but I think that this is just just really well executed for what it is. And obviously many other people agree with that sentiment. So yeah, I guess let's average all of this out. Overall, I guess I would say that Gravitas gets, you know, something like 4.2 hearts. If I wasn't so concerned with decimals, I would just say 4. But I think, you know, in a number as small as 5, decimals are pretty important. So yeah, 4.2, definitely not 4.5, you know what I mean? But not quite a 4 either. It's definitely worth a play. I would recommend it to anyone looking to burn an hour or two on some kind of new puzzle game. I would recommend it to people who don't have experience in this kind of game because it is relatively simple. And again, it is very fun. At the end of the day, it is a very fun game. But yeah, I think it's great. If for some reason this doesn't seem very convincing, I would just say that you should try playing it yourself. Again, it doesn't take up too much space, and it also doesn't take up too much of your time. Maybe save it for the next rainy day that you're sitting at home and feeling like disillusioned with all of the games that you already have and that you've played a million times already or something. It is a very nice break for me from the open world RPG genre, because that's, you know, what I probably spend the most of my time playing. So yeah, what are your thoughts on Gravitas? Have you played it before? Did you play it when it came out? Did you play it like over the lockdown part of life? I'm just now getting into more PC games and stuff, so this series is not just to help others, it's also to help myself figure out what I like in a PC game, since I'm so used to using a controller. But yeah, blah, blah, blah. Not super important information. But yeah, if you have played it, which level is your favorite? Like I said before, I really like the garden. But I'm also kind of a fan of like the overall vibes of surprise as well, because it really confused me. Okay. I actually thought about that one for a long time, and I wouldn't say I struggled, because again, I don't feel like I struggled with any of the puzzles here. I feel like I just worked them out methodically. But yeah, surprise really surprised me, I guess, for lack of a better word. All right, well, that's about all I have on Gravitas. Thank you so much for watching. If this is your first video of mine that you're seeing, please consider subscribing. I'm not gonna say you should, but maybe at least consider it, because I will be trying to review at least one free-to-play game per week. Maybe on some really blessed weeks I'll get to do 2. But yeah, and then I guess check out the starter pack and see if this is the kind of channel that you're interested in. And if you are a returning viewer, hello, hi. This week has been kind of difficult for me. I've been super busy, and also just not wanting to do anything at the same time. It's been a really strange combination. So yeah, as always, thank you for your patience. And yeah, I hope to see you in the Let's Play, or even in the next episode of the free-to-play game review. So just in case you want to know which game is next, I am always going to let you know. The next game is another puzzle game called Handshakes. It is completely free. It's available on Steam, and hopefully I'll get to it in a couple days and have it reviewed for next week. Obviously it's not always going to be puzzle games, but I just thought I would play the puzzle games first because that seemed more fun for me. Yeah, okay, so cool. If you want, play along, and then we can basically share our findings together next week. Thank you so much again, and yeah, I hope to see you soon. Bye.